we exist as a result of administrative incompetence, really. I mean, it seems to me that we wouldn't exist as a group if it weren't for the fact that the administration made the very stupid mistake of, offering a $50 million new funding package to new graduate students and offering nothing to graduate students who've been here for sometimes 10 years without getting anything. So fundamentally, I mean, you could say that that was a strategic opportunity, I guess, and that there are people who would have liked to have had a union, whether or not the administration had, made a colossal error. But really, that was the excuse or pertinent circumstance. What do you guys think?
What first came out of that then was this first group that advocated for funding stipend issues precisely related to that question of inequity between incoming students and current students. And then GSU, Graduate Students United, came out of the first group in order to focus more on employment-related issues and wages and, in general, issues that affect all students at all levels of their education, rather than particularly the students who are in their first 4 or 5 years but not incoming students, which was the main focus of this first advocacy group.
Can you give some examples of the issues that unite people beyond the stipend question?
I mean, the low teaching pay, I think, is undoubtedly something that unites people, especially when they find out what our teaching pay is in comparison with other universities, and they realize, for a TA, I make $1,500. Wait, if I go up to UIC, I would make 3 times as much for the same amount of work? What is that? And the same for all the sort of other forms of graduate teaching, and I think that really pulls people together.
I think one of the things I'd like to hear from you, if you don't mind, is what are your personal motivations for becoming involved in the organization? I understand that there are issues that you hope would unite the graduate employee population or the graduate student population more largely, and we can talk more about those. But what are your individual motivations? Andrew, do you want to?
Sure. Well, I'm a student who's coming in under the new funding package. And so the way that funding package works is currently, regardless of what wage increases might come in, they're simply deducted from that stipend. And so at least for the first 5 years that stipend is meant to cover, at least superficially, there's not anything in my material best interest to affiliate with the GSU in a sort of superficial material way. And so my motivation is more along the lines of solidarity and of politicizing the university, and of really taking seriously the structures of labor, and sort of demystifying both the apprenticeship ideology and the kind of labor market ideology that we get fed, and realize that this is a labor system, and that regardless of our positions within that system, some of which are better than others, we all sort of share something in a recognition of the kind of ideologies that through which we sort of see where we're at.
I'd like to circle back to the question of analysis, both as individuals. I think as individuals you have a variety of commitments to analysis of the role of the academy in the larger labor system, and the sort of, to the degree it is an internal economy, the internal labor system. But can we continue just to hear what your individual motivations are for joining?
I feel like I have lots of different ones, but and probably the key one is feeling just generally disempowered in my experience at the university. And I was here at the University of Chicago as an undergraduate, took on a large amount of debt, but nonetheless sort of bought into the idea of going on into the academy, and that idea, it doesn't matter if you take on more debt, even for a master's degree, for instance, because eventually you'll get to the end of that program, you'll get a tenured position, and things will be good. And I think I've become pretty aware at this point that that's probably just not likely and probably not going to happen. But then even in other sort of smaller daily things, trying to make changes at the university, whether it was over issues of sustainability or just how something was run in the dorms, feeling like there was never a way to really adequately address that, and that, moreover, what ways there were to address that were almost inherently anti-democratic. And so I think that my involvement with Graduate Students United has largely been, I mean, this is my last year as an MA student here at the university, so there's not, like Andrew, there's not necessarily the material motivation that I'm going to be affected by some sort of change that comes in next year, but it's really the sense that we need to be transforming the university into a place that doesn't disempower people, doesn't make people feel very apathetic and sometimes completely discouraged about the possibilities for their own action. Because I feel like the university gave me the tools for thinking about my action and then denied it. And so I think that I participate in a way to try and change that, so that's not the system that we're in.
Well, on the one hand, I guess unlike what Andrew and Megan said, I have every personal material interest in improving the situation of grad employees at the university, because at the moment that's aside from odd jobs, all of my income comes from working as a graduate instructor. So I definitely would benefit from any improvement in wages and teaching conditions. But at the same time, I also probably wouldn't be working here right now if it weren't for GSU. Actually organizing in a place where there is a community of which I'm a part and where I can, let's say, do more organizing rather than activism, meaning getting involved with people who don't identify as activists themselves, but who are willing to be a part of something that can work for change.
It almost seems as if you're describing your personal interest in both a narrow sense and a capacious sense. In the narrow sense, you're describing personal interest as your interest in wages and working conditions. But in a broader sense, you're describing your interest in being able to have an effect on the institution of which you're a part. In what sense do you see this organization being a democratic force on this campus?
I think democracy should be both broadly and specifically understood. Broadly in that we need a democracy over the production of culture and creation of all kinds of ideas, as well as the running of this clearly material economic institution. But also democracy specifically understood so that we're able to critique ideas like faculty governance and student government that when they appear primarily as facades that are not actually part of control of the institution.
What are you, Antonio or something?